Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Supply Chain Data Driven podcast. We've got a great guest with us this morning. I'm really looking forward to speaking with Taki, Eddine, Alimat, who is the co-founder and CEO of Synode, a fantastic company out of Canada. And Taki, it's great to have you here. Welcome. How's everything going?
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for having me in here with you. It's doing great. We're busy, but it's good busy, I would say.
Always good to hear. And Eddine, can you give us a little background about yourself? I'm curious to know more about your journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I come from a hybrid background, combining software engineering, visual arts, mainly photography, and entrepreneurship. But it really all started with photography, where I used to roam the streets of Montreal with my Canon 5D MK2, getting on top of silos, grain silos, rooftops, and looking for this perfect vantage point and view on top of our beloved city, Montreal. This led me to win a contest, which was the photo of the year, voted by the City of Montreal and Centre d'Histoire de Montréal and other organizations like that, which fostered and led me to initiate my entrepreneurial journey with a company I started, which was called Pixel Montréal, and where I did some real estate photography in parallel with my studies. And this is where I'll introduce my technical side, now that I've spoken about the creative one. And one thing that I liked a lot, which was the creation, visual creation with photography, videography, graphic design. But there's another thing that fascinated me, which is creating platforms that helps and allows users to create themselves and share their creations. And that's what led me to software engineering, because it's the perfect place to create those kind of platforms. During my professional journey, I found a fondness, if I may say, with the front-end development, because it was at the crossroad of the technical and the visual. But it was at the crossroad between different departments, the sales and marketing, the customer service, the engineers, the programmers, to create this facade, this interface where the client can interact with the company's products and processes. And I found my ease at that. So I participated in a lot of great projects here in Canada, but also in England, where I worked with this amazing company called Brave the Skies. And I'm mentioning it because it was a company that had a technological arm, and under the umbrella of the company, there were other startups, home-based startups. And in this environment, I re-found or retasted the thrills that my entrepreneurial chords vibrated, if I may say. And I found the same in Canada when I came back. So I left Montreal. I installed in Eastern Townships. Super beautiful. I don't regret it, by the way. And I worked with a company that was basically having the same setup with other startups and companies spinning off from it. But it was also the technological arm of top manufacturers in North America, such as Bush Furniture in the United States, Bestar, Cozy. Some of you might know Cozy. And I had the chance to work not only with an internal team of programmers, designers, marketers, but also with their team. And while working with their engineers, the customer service, the sales and marketing departments, this is where I realized that the post-purchase experience wasn't a hassle only for the end user or the end client. It was a challenge also behind the scenes for the engineers. They've seen the product documentation creation as a punishment. And this is what led slowly to the eureka moment that is Synode today.
Fantastic. I appreciate your background, and obviously a very varied background, a lot of different experiences, including, as you mentioned, jumping on top of rooftops, which is incredible. A thrilling background, Eddine. And It's fantastic to be speaking with you. As mentioned, what advice would you give someone who dreams of starting their own company as you've done with Synode?
Yeah, so the dreaming part is super important. So dream big, but I suggest to start small and go fast, and especially learn and fail fast. This is important, and it implies a lot of flexibility, but also having a good vision on your landscape and about yourself and the landscape as well. And maybe another advice is to surround yourself with the right people, the right talents, because this is the key element as well.
I love that. I think that's so important to surround yourself with the proper team and match that with the solution, or sorry, with the problems at hand that you're looking to solve, right? And can you give our audience a little bit more of the story of Synode? What are some of the big challenges? Where did your vision come from to bring it all together today?
Yeah, so yeah, I concluded the presentation or the background presentation about the Eureka moment that came when I realized that behind the scene there was this whole world of the creation of the product documentation itself. And what I realized and what I noticed is a paradox. The paradox is that the product documentation is comprising a lot of those 2D diagrams that makes our joy as customers when we try to assemble or use some products. But those 2D diagrams are based on top of 3D files, which is the most visual element we have technologically today. The 3D model is highly visual, but the way product documentation, the traditional one, are created is that we go from the 3D model. The technicians or the engineers try to deassemble it, create the sequences, but with manually and with 2D tools, and which brings a lot of confusion to the end users in trying to decipher, to interpret what they're seeing. And the question I've asked myself is, since we're starting from the 3D model, why not simply have a tool where we can take it, play with almost with our hands, deassemble it, plan the sequences, rearrange the elements, making it highly visual with automated animations. And when we're done with that, when we're satisfied, then we can share it with the end user, whether it be the client, the distributor, the partner, for assembly, maintenance, or simply utilization. So when I imagined this tool, of course, it was an idea on a napkin, so we had to start small, as I said. So I've been lucky because I had a good reception from the manufacturers we've been working with that validated the simplest prototype you could ever see, which was a 3D controlled, animation controlled model that goes from a panel that goes off and then goes back in. The simplest thing. It was web-based, which already differentiated Synode from what's going on in the market, because most solutions are turnkey and they are deployed through the third party or the furnisher application, mobile application. So what has been developed as a prototype, it was web-based, so it could be embedded everywhere, like a YouTube video that you can play, interact, you scan a QR code, and then you can have it in your screen anywhere. And we had the LOI from this company, which helped me a lot in pitching the idea to the president of the company I was working for, that embarked in the adventure and the craziness of Synode, our vision. And we slowly started to boost our 3D visualizer to create cool animations for different industries, not only the furniture industry for which we come from, but other industries. Actually, one of our first use cases is in the construction materials industry, and this is a whole other story. I love this one. And slowly we validated the idea, the market, the differentiation, and then came the time to create the software that does what I mentioned before, which is you play with your hands and you plan your sequences, you animate, and you can create a lot of different cool documentation and technical communications with the existing 3D files in the company. So this is what led to Synode. And by the way, Synode means system of assembly in Old Greek.
I was just going to ask. That's. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? I think it's a fitting name.
Yeah, I must admit that when after the napkin, I had to give a name to this baby, and I was looking for names, and I must admit I was like looking at names like enhancer or things like that. And it's while going through a dictionary of Old Greek and looking through words containing assembly in them, then I noticed Synode, which is system of assembly with its evolution. It has been used a lot in the church because it's like there's this assembly of clerks and priests. I'm sure I'm not giving the right exact definition with this, but it has been used a lot with the church, and that's why if you search Synode, you'll find a lot of references in that regard. But I thought to myself, let's go back to the original meaning, and nothing better to describe what we're doing than Synode, system of an assembly. So yeah, that's the origin story of the name.
It's a great name. It's a catchy name, and a fantastic origin story as well. And I think it's very it's going to stick in people's mind, right? And it's gonna really be something that they remember. It's a memorable name. You mentioned some of the different use cases. You mentioned furniture, the furniture industry being the origin, correct, or the primary use case from which everything else sprouted. I'm sure I can certainly identify with 2D printed instructions when I'm trying to put together some furniture. Is that along the lines of the problem you're solving in that industry?
Yeah, totally. Whenever there is 3D models and product documentation, technical communications, we have the ground to set up or to provide a good value for the manufacturer. But we started in the furniture manufacturing world. But one thing that is special, one of our earliest customers is a construction materials company called IntegraSpec that build and commercialize those innovative ICF panels, insulated concrete foams panels, that allows you basically to build your structure almost like Legos. So you put your panels and then afterwards you pour in your concrete. And their representatives came to see us very early and with a toolbox. Imagine that, filled with DVDs, VCRs, and a paper guide of 98 pages, asking us to help them to furnish a solution, because the customer service were like swamped with calls, questions. There was this much text in each page and this much of images. It was really hard to grasp and understand their products. And this is funny because one of the first guides that had been created in Synode isn't an assembly guide. It's a utilization guide to help you build with their panels. And the funny part is that we were looking for slogans at the time, and one of the slogans we had is we help or redefine how we build the world together, because we've seen it as a creation tool to help you build. And it was basically one of our first clients. We help their clients use their products and build them. And the end result is fascinating. So you have this step-by-step guide that shows you and onboard you from the process of setting up the plan to how do you put and place all of the panels together, how you stitch them together, how you do the cutting the panels, the doors, and at the end you'll be able to do the pouring. And this is one fascinating use case that show how Synode quickly started to be used by other industries. So now we have marine industries, aerospatial industries that are seeing the value of repurposing their existing 3D files and quickly generate smooth and captivating interactive documentations.
That's fascinating. And if I were to, capture everything in one sentence from what I'm hearing about Synode, and you can, point me in the right direction if I'm off here, but it sounds to me that Synode is helping companies, really transform the way that they share knowledge in 3D. Would that be an accurate one-line description?
Super accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big part of our vision, because knowledge sharing is key inside organizations, not only internally because we have training, reskilling, knowledge transfer, but also with the external world, with your clients, distributors, partners, in order for them to understand your products and set it up correctly. And one paradox we have, or I may say more of giveaway, no, not giveaway, trade-off, let's say, that one trade-off we meet when we're dealing with knowledge sharing is that we have to sacrifice quality for quantity. As humans, the best way for us to learn is by engaging multiple senses, by being in situations with other persons, allowing us to see, talk, interact, and that's the fastest way for us to learn, for generally speaking. So it's impossible to clone that person that is training you thousands of times, millions of times, to provide this quality of teaching and learning and knowledge transfer. So what we do is that we use formats that are limited in terms of how they can convey this knowledge, such as PDF, paper documentation, sometimes videos, but they are limitless in terms of the quantity that we can share. 3D comes in and resolves that because it allows you to add other senses to the experience. You can interact, you can play, you can hear, you can see animation, you can access angles, and it can also be shared with an unlimited amount of people. So that's why, as you mentioned, for us, 3D is the perfect tool to redefine the way we share knowledge. And it's the base or the start of a revolution that is well in process right now, that will lead to mixed reality, more and more extended reality surrounding us in the super near future, if not now.
It's so interesting how this is such an advanced way to share knowledge, but at the same time, I'm sure there are some barriers to adoption. I'm curious, Eddine, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges you face in terms of the adoption of this 3D sharing knowledge?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why we don't see a lot of those 3D product documentations around us when we buy products or when we try to set up or install an item is that it's super costly to create. It's, as I said, the landscape in this 3D space is monopolized by turnkey agencies that will take the 3D files of companies and they create it for them. They set them up in calendars and they'll tell them, let's make a rendezvous in 3 months and then we'll deploy it for you. And if you need to do adjustments, let's do another X in the calendar and we'll do it for you in another X months. So it makes it super costly, time consuming, and you lose autonomy, and you also cause some friction with the customer because you make them download an app that is not from your business and you forward them to another service provider. So that's why Synode is trying to tackle this challenge and to eliminate this barrier, if I may say, by furnishing the companies the tool that help them repurpose themselves and quickly the 3D files to create interactive product documentation. So that's the barrier we're trying to eliminate, and we try to convey it to manufacturers to say, if you take the ratio between what it causes to the business to have bad product documentation in terms of return rates up to 35% caused by assembly related issues, the customer service inquiries volumes, the evaluations, the notes that are down because of that, the time to proficiency, which is too high internally, and all of other elements, and the fact that they already have the 3D files, and now that we provide the solution, the barriers are slowly starting to fade away, and that's what we're doing right now.
Amazing. And talk to me a little bit about the reaction you've received from some of the customers you work with. What are they saying to you, Eddine, about this new technology you have?
Well, the reaction is, duh, this is a no-brainer. Why didn't this exist before? Why did they? And it's flattering in a way, but it shows you the walk or the way we have a long way, because we have something unique, and the reaction is, of course, yes, exactly why. And the reflexes are, yeah, we've heard about this company doing something similar, but it's costly, it's nice to have, it's we're not there yet, etc., etc. And one other aspect I didn't, and maybe I don't know if we can call it an announce in this podcast, but the vision of Synode is not to be only dedicated for the after purchase or for the training aspect of a business. The 3D file or model through our technology can be repurposed to other use cases. And there's a new application in our platform, which is seen as an ecosystem of apps and add-ons that helps reuse the same 3D files inside that has been uploaded to it to create another type of assembly, but this time it's an assembly of different products together to streamline the ordering process. So now manufacturers are starting to use Synode to create and embed quickly using the same WYSIWYG interface through a different type of timeline, because this time it's not a horizontal timeline, it's a vertical one, to create configurations of products to enhance their sales, and all of that reusing the same material. So this is another way for us to reduce the barrier and make manufacturers realize the power of 3D files, if I may say.
Of course, and it seems like there's so many different applications across so many different industries, as you've mentioned. I'd like to dive into a few specific use cases beyond what you've explained for our viewers. What are some really exciting use cases right now for you? Is there a specific industry that you're really excited about, or I'd love for you to elaborate on some of these use cases?
Yeah, one exciting use case is the one we're preparing for the Royal Canadian Navy, which is using our software solution to create and to replace basically big chunks of paper documentation with interactive maintenance and training documentation. And all of that, as I said, reusing the existing 3D files. So this is super exciting for us because it shows you how what we're building is, if I may say, agnostic. It's like a bit of a sort of PowerPoint for 3D. A PowerPoint, you only using it for example, accountancy or for corporate presentations. You can use it for a whole lot of industries and use cases. And Synode is like that right now. And you can be a furniture manufacturer. You can be a marine officer that wants to improve the time to proficiency, to reduce the quality problems, etc. And all of that using the same platform. So this is super exciting for us. And of course, there are other industries as well using Synode. And it gets me back to the first question, or the first part of our meeting, which is, when I said that what fascinates me the most is to create something that enables enable other users to create. We're in the team, we're looking at that with amazed eyes, and we're like, we did something that people used to create things that we couldn't even imagine before. So that's great.
It's it's fascinating. It's truly fascinating. Can you talk to me, Eddine, about why 3D instructions are the future of workplace efficiency? We hear a lot about efficiency in the workplace. Why can 3D instructions be the answer here, or be an answer for a problem?
Yeah, so we're visual learners, and as mentioned before, combining different senses provides the best experience in terms of learning, training inside a business, especially in the context of a labor shortage like we're living nowadays. A lot of companies were helping. Before using Synode, what they did is they go look at the senior employee, and they ask him to go and train those new employees. So it's taken away of his production line to train his colleagues, but it is hardly encapsulated in a format that can be shared afterwards, and the back and forths caused by that are enormous in a business. The best way to illustrate that, let me take a step back. All right. So we're all using Gmails, Outlooks, email providers to manage our communications, daily communications. But Scott, imagine if I tell you that there's no more Gmail, no more of that. We go back to the good old handwritten letters. What would we say?
I mean, it would take a lot more time to get our message across. Sometimes I do miss those days of handwritten letters, but certainly it's something we don't all have time for, right?
Yeah, totally. And manufacturers nowadays have the equivalent of those handwritten letters, which is the technical communications, the product documentation or the process documentation. And it's not for nothing that it feels like a punishment for technicians and engineers to create and maintain them. It's so time consuming, and the fun part is to create the product or the process itself, not to document it, update it, and share it. So this lack of love shows, if I may say, and has a lot of implications internally and externally. And that's why we think that providing a tool that help repurpose quickly 3D files through automations and through different cool features is key for improving the knowledge sharing inside organizations and with their partners.
Incredible. And there's obviously a lot of ways that the current knowledge sharing is done for technical information that can be improved, and this is a big gap that you're solving. What are some different things that are wrong with the way that most complex technical information is shared? You've mentioned a few different things already, but I'm curious if there's more we can elaborate on.
Yeah, so I mentioned quickly the term versioning and updation, but it's a big deal because imagine that you've just created like a 50-page instruction guide or manual guide for a product or a process, and that we know that companies are always improving their workflow, their products, and that you have a small update to do. You want to, let's say, change a bolt because you have a new type of bolts, or you have shortened the panel, so you need to readapt everything. So you imagine the time that it takes to update manually all of that, create a new version, store it somewhere, and having to deal with who's having what, because some partners have the old guide because they have the old products, and others have. And since it's paper-based, it's impossible to know what's going on with it. It's impossible to capture analytics data to improve it and to update it when necessary in a click. So that's another example of what Synode can provide for those manufacturers to quickly help them update, generate new versions, and to capture the data to detect problematic steps, because there always will be some steps to be improved, because we'll know that users go back to this step again and again and again, and this is a sign that something is wrong with this step. because sometimes they go through the whole process and then realize they did something wrong. And that's one other cool aspect of Synode, which is that, of course, it automates the animation. So if you take away parts, the animations are done automatically. But the other element is that the step ordering is, you can change it, you can readjust it, you can. It's not linear. It's a tree-based algorithm that makes it possible. So this is another way of helping manufacturers to improve, update quickly what they have created with us. And one last element is that sign-on is a central. We can see it, look at it as a central. Some companies generated other formats through what they created with sign-on. So we talked about extended reality, augmented reality, which is of course in our roadmap. But they can also generate videos with sign-on if they need, or other formats through what they created. So it becomes a one-stop for encapsulating the process of creating, sharing, and in different formats to their partners and users, depending on their requirements, of course.
Very interesting. And you just mentioned AR, VR being on the roadmap for Synode. I'm curious, what are your thoughts, Eddine, on the current state of AR and VR, and how does that fit into your future plans? Where do you see yourself and your company going?
So I think that we're in the Cambrian age of these visualization technologies. And what's going to happen with the mixed reality? We've all seen the big announcements of Apple with the Apple Vision Pro, and we're on the verge of we're in an arms race between big players that will quickly democratize those type of headsets and make them smaller and less invasive. I think that 10 years, 20 years from now, the screens we're looking through right now will not be that, cutting edge. It won't be, it will be almost like, I'm not going to, maybe it's an exaggeration, but I like to say to our manufacturers that paper documentation is like the yellow books or the Sears catalog. Nobody is using it anymore. And I think that screens and the way we share knowledge right now, statically speaking, is going to be replaced by the 3D visualizations. And this will take a lot of aspects, and it's fascinating because it's going to be combined. We'll see augmented reality combined with 3D to create those interactive, you can interact with your environment through extended reality and all. And this is where we're getting in, and that's what Synode is preparing with its platform.
Incredible. And you've had a great journey as an entrepreneur. It's not easy to build a company. Is there anything, Eddine, over the last few years that has surprised you during your journey of building Synode about the industry that you serve?
The most surprising thing is how you could find the same pattern in different aspects of the business, whether it be internally and externally. And it's all about finding the right balance between, the vision and the bootstrap, between the visual, the technical, between the collective, the individual, between where you're at and where you want to go. So maintaining the balance between different axes, if I may say, is the most surprising, or maybe it's not the right word, but it's the most thrilling, if I may say. And I realized that it's basically the same pattern everywhere. And that's how you can also predict the success of a company or a startup. It's the capability or the ability to maintain a good level of focus with a good vision, and upgrading step by step and lifting off your business to fulfill its potential.
Absolutely. And do you have a proudest moment as CEO so far of Synode?
The proudest moment is when company directors that are our clients, that when they call and they're like, it's amazing, they're proud because they receive good feedback from their customers and they're all excited about it, and it, it's really great moments. And I always remember this director of um, an, how do you say, a bot elevator company, manufacturing company, that was showing to me the reaction of their distributors when they saw I showed them they've shown them the 3D instructions created in Synode. Like, look at that, look at the reaction. And people are like, that's great, that's awesome. It's a way for it makes them proud, which makes us proud, because it's a way for them to see that's us, that's how our product. And so those are great moments, and full of pride for us.
That's great feedback, and I'm sure the customers you have are thrilled with the service that they're receiving. I'm curious. Obviously, adoption of new technologies takes some time. Eddine, why do you think it's important for the industries that you serve with Synode to prioritize digital transformation within their organizations?
Yeah, it's a fast-paced world. We have breakthroughs each day. We're living a lot of mini revolutions in the quantum field, in the artificial intelligence field, in the robotics field, extended reality, mixed reality field. And I think if we stick to old patterns or old way of thinking because it's comfortable, it's risky, because all of those mini revolutions come with great opportunities for your businesses, but it's corollary to the threats. I don't want to sound alarming, but if we ignore them, we can be victims of effects that are not welcome, if I may say, to your business. So that's why it's important to have a good digital transformation strategy in the business, and also to maintain a good technological watch. I know a lot of business leaders are busy with a lot of things going on at the same time, but it's important to see what's going on around in your landscape, and even further, to anticipate the future and make the right decisions now.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And, one thing you mentioned earlier in our conversation was, someone needing to train a new person within the company. And, is there time for that? There's a big labor shortage in manufacturing right now. So I think it's necessary that digital technologies such as Synode exist, and this will help companies become more efficient and overcome some of the challenges associated with these labor shortages. So I think there's challenges to adoption, but with a technology like Synode has, I really see this starting to pick up and gain momentum, which is really exciting for you, I'm sure. I've really appreciated learning more about Synode, some of the topics and challenges you face as a CEO. I'm curious, are there any topics that we haven't discussed yet that you'd like to talk about? Anything that you'd want to add on to this conversation for the audience to know about Synode, 3D technologies, VR, AR, anything that you want to add on?
Maybe I have a question. It's not something to add on, but
Sure.
it's a question for you. And one of the interesting characteristics of AXA is that it streamlined the communications internally and externally regarding the supply chain. And I wanted to see if you foresee some impacts of those 3D visualization technologies, and if you foresee some implications of them in the way you streamline the communications and the supply chain world, if you have any thought about that.
It's an interesting question, and it's one that I haven't thought about yet. As you mentioned, we help, we facilitate more efficient collaboration within the supply chain. And I'm sure, as these 3D technologies evolve, communication between suppliers and manufacturers, the way this is done, it's still old school. It's still very, very stuck in the Stone Ages. I'm sure there's some room for technologies such as this. I'd have to think more on it, Eddine, and maybe there's a part 2 to be had here, and we can dive into some of the use cases there. But it's very interesting to think about.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting to see how, in both world, there's this streamlining of communications, but in different aspects, and it's always the same, how do you say, not the same pain, but pains that are similar in terms of reducing the dispersion, the use of inadequate tools to do and manage those communications. But in one way for the supply chain, and the other way is in the product documentation and the product technical communications using 3D. So I wanted to see if there are some thoughts about how one can how do you say, impact the other, and vice versa.
I'm sure there are ways, and like you mentioned, it's about streamlining that communication. For us, it's about supply chain visibility, and if manufacturers don't have visibility into what's going on in their operations, what's going on in their supply chain, it's very hard to make the proper business decisions. It's very hard to be strategic when everyone is constantly in that reactive mode, right?
Yeah.
So I think getting people out of the reactive mode and into the strategic mode is great, and this is what I see with Synode as well. You're helping manufacturers and other industries be more strategic, and you're helping them communicate more effectively and collaborate more efficiently at the end of the day. Correct?
Yeah, totally.
Amazing. The last question I have for you, Eddine, is our audience is very curious to learn about you, and you've done a great job explaining your background and the background of Synode. What are 2 books that you would recommend to our audience, if you could recommend anything, any genre?
Any genre?
Yes, if you have any.
Yeah. So one, I go from that impacted me most recently is The Righteous Mind of Jonathan Haidt, which is a fascinating synthesis between psychology, political analysis, and moral reasoning. And I say that it's really interesting because it delves deeply into the psychological roots of the way we take decisions, the way we behave, and then it ascends to the implications of it in politics and and other aspects of our social life. But as an entrepreneur, when I was reading it, I couldn't help but notice the implications as well in our own the daily life, in terms of the group psychology, or in terms of the manufacturers or the clients we're talking to. So it was really an interesting read that's outside of our business, but it can help us grow in our understanding of what the society and what's surrounding us. And the second book is, of course, it's a classic. Start with Why, Simon Sinek.
Definitely a classic.
Yeah, that's the kind of books that I like to have as a reminder to read over again. And it's the way it explains purpose and its implication on success, on your business, on your personal fulfillment or growth, is a classic, and it always lives with me. I always ask myself this question when I try to convey our messaging. It's, why are we doing that? And not only in terms of Synode, but also in terms of more tactical or day-to-day decisions. So it's important to keep that as well close to us.
Totally agree. I think purpose is super important. That's a fantastic book. Appreciate the recommendations. On that note, Eddine, it's been a great conversation. I'll give you the last word to wrap up this podcast. Anything else on your end? If not, anything to guide our audience to, what would you like them to check out? And we'll finish there.
Yeah, well, what I say is thank you for the podcast. It was really it was a pleasure. It was agreeable. And yeah, for the audience, is that if you're looking to launch a company or set up a business, follow your instincts, keep your eyes open, trust yourself, and surround yourself with talented people. So that's my recommendations. And most importantly, like Charles Bukowski said, don't try. It's paradoxical, but this means that it needs to flow and it needs to be natural and it needs to resonate with you in order to make it fun and purposeful as well.
Love it. Thanks, Eddine. And again, this has been the Data-Driven Supply Chain Podcast. Fantastic interview with Taki, Eddine, Alimat. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Scott. Have a nice day.